So, Assassin's Creed Shadows executive producer admits that Ubisoft is going, quote, beyond what is accepted truth. You don't say. You don't say. How the narrative has changed, because this was not what they were saying a while ago. So Mark Alexis Cote, Ubisoft's executive producer for its Assassin's Creed franchise, recently admitted that the company's aim with the aim with Assassin's Creed Shadows is to go beyond what is accepted truth. Ah, I see. In an interview with the New York Times that Ubisoft used as a hit piece to attack its former fans and potential customers for Assassin's Creed Shadows, Cote revealed exactly what he and his team are doing with the game. So he said, quote, "We want people to be passionate about history by literally not telling history." Good, great, excellent. What does that mean? Stay true to well-documented moments and historical figures, but not shying away from having a critical point of view and defying cliches to go beyond what is the accepted truth. Oh, right. Okay. So just the cliche of history, the stereotype of history. Is this really what, like, what are you talking about? I find this framing to be fascinating because there's many people that watch Shogun were exposed to a fictionalized retelling of history, right? So the first actual Englishman in Japan, it tells a fictionalized retelling of actual historical events, with Nobunaga. William Allen, I think, off the top of my head, is the first Englishman in Japan. So it's an actual historical event, but they fictionalized it. Now that's slightly different because you're working within the same framework of what actually occurred within history, but you're dramatizing certain aspects to, write a compelling narrative, but still fitting within the confines of that authentic historical moment. Whereas this, they're like, you know what, actually, we want, and that would make people really interested in history. I'm sure people did actually go and Google afterwards, is the engine real? And they found that the individual was actually a real person, and for the subsequent history of that individual. They're like, well, we want people to be passionate about history, so we're going to completely subvert history and bastardize it, because we've got to have a critical point of view, and we've got to defy cliches. What constitutes a cliche? What constitutes a cliche in history? What are you talking about, you fool? Because if it's the fact that there was only Japanese people in feudal Japan, or there was no black people in feudal Japan, I mean, that's pretty accurate, whether you think it's a cliche or not. I mean, is history a cliche? Can history be a cliche? I don't think it can it? Can history be a cliche? I'm so confused by this nonsense. It's utter crap.
The bottom line is whether it's sort of deliberately kind of hateful or not. Like the people in their hearts wanted, they're like, what's it called? When you're in love with black people or blackness and you foist that on everything.
No idea.
Can't remember what it's called, but so they're doing that at the expense of Japanese history and Japanese culture, right? But there's nothing wrong with sort of changing or playing around with history, alternative history. So, for example, the thing that sprung to my mind was I played Assassin's Creed 2 all the way through a couple of times. That's the one set in Florence, right? And you meet like the young Afrocentrism, someone says, that sort of thing. In Assassin's Creed 2, you see the young Leonardo da Vinci, right? And I've read Giorgio Vasari's life of Leonardo. I've got content actually on lotuseaters.com. Check it out. Talking about the life of Leonardo da Vinci, 2 or even 3-part series about Leonardo. Okay, like a few hours, 4 or 5 hours worth of content talking about the real story of Leonardo's life, right? And in the Assassin's Creed 2, there's a bit where you fly in Leonardo's flying machine. Okay, now so they've changed history. He did drawings for flying machines, but they would never have worked. They would never have flown. He didn't understand aerodynamics properly. Okay,
Mm.
well, the writers of Assassin's Creed 2 have played around with history. They've changed history there. Okay, but it wasn't with hatred in their hearts, right? They weren't trying to pervert Italian history deliberately, right? They're not trying to do anything nefarious. This is
Mm.
nefarious what they're doing here with this big black samurai dude. It's weird. It's weird and nefarious, and nobody wants it. It's not in the spirit of what anyone wants. I mean, how many black American people are really loving what Ubisoft have done here? You know, like how many are like, yeah, thank God, finally we've got a brother in medieval Japan. Thank God, like about time. Like, right? They're not. Uh,
Chomping at the bit for
yeah,
representation of feudal Japan. Like, come on, behave.
right. It's okay to
Absolute nonsense.
change history, play around with history, alternative histories, right?
Mm.
But it's when you're going to piss off a whole nation of people by doing that, right? That's when it's an issue, especially if your profit margin depends on it, right? It's the idea of having a black Cleopatra. Cleopatra wasn't even Egyptian. She wasn't even North African. She was Macedonian. She was Greek, essentially. So, no, she wasn't sub-Saharan black,
I'm
right?
sure Netflix told me that she was, though.
Right. Must be true then, right? Yeah, I know. So the difference is, are you going to annoy your own base, your own fans so much that you go broke because of it?
Mm.
Well, that's the difference, and that's obviously what they've done here. So yeah, I hope it really, really, really damages them. I hope the whole company implodes because of it.
I think they were at like $12 a share or €12 a share or something like that. So it's pretty bad at the moment. Pretty damn bad.
Mm.
But yeah, this whole like their aim is to, again, you know, what you said is a fictionalized retelling of history, isn't it? You know, it's a sort of, you know, with Da Vinci and stuff like that. Like it's taking the core concept and just a little bit of dramatization around it, but you're still working within pretty set confines. This is just nonsense, just absolute nonsense, ridiculous. I guess the argument could be had that it's they are doing a fictionalized retelling, but then they're really not. He wasn't a samurai. He just wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
He was a glorified. It was still a slave. He was a glorified entertainer. You know, Nobunaga. I'm pretty certain I'm getting the name right, but Nobunaga, one of the first things he did was order him to strip down and wash himself because he was like, I can't believe how black this guy is.
Yeah.
You know, just ordered him to wash, just scrub your body. Like, you know, I'm fascinated by the fact that this guy's so black. He was a curiosity. He wasn't put on a pedestal. So sword bearer, basically, it was just a glorified sword carrier for.
Well, he's a retainer. I mean, yeah.
Sword carrier.
It's a weird place we are because all of this has been so perverted. I mean, and this is their ultimate goal is to pervert history, and to make people misunderstand it and to think all these other things existed in all these countries that were ethnocentric, and they just didn't exist. I mean, the Chinese, same problem. I mean, you had massive racial cleansings all around the world at particular points, and I think, that's this multicultural, illusion that people are trying to force upon the globe is a problem. Cultures are important. In order to have harmony in a society, your culture has to match, which is why in the United States we've had legal immigration and we've had people that come here that become part of a melting pot. They adhere themselves to the culture. Well, they used to. They don't do that.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say for the last.
It's been 20 years.
No, it's been over that now, like about 50 odd years. I America is a this will offend a lot of people, but from a cultural perspective, America is a failed experiment. You wouldn't have anywhere near as much of the racial violence that you have there if it wasn't a failed multicultural experiment. It absolutely is a failed.
I'll push
I mean, you
back
can
on
disagree
that.
all you like, but they wouldn't be murdering one another.
Well, good.
It is a failed experiment.
Thank you for your permission for me to disagree. I appreciate that.
Disagree, but I'm just late. I'm stating why.
I'm going to say that we didn't have any of this racial divide after the 70s for a long period of time. It had been beaten back.
Except for the last 50 years.
Okay, we did not have this until we started to get into the 2000s when it reasserted itself. No, they've been selling. No, they have been selling a pack of lies, and that's. Did you watch the film Am I a Racist yet?
No, I haven't had a chance.
Okay, you probably would.
Not available. Can't find it. Homogenous societies, whether that be primarily ethnic, to be honest, because culture is downstream of, directly correlated to ethnicity. But an ethnic homogenous culture is, preferable for a sort of a prosperous and peaceful society. Which I know will be like really shocking for some people to hear, but I mean, I think that's pretty true.
There's the adage that the traitor communists try and say that diversity is our strength. Now, of course, it isn't. Homogeneity is a strength. Diversity is a weakness. So, but I mean, what Culture said is true about at least what Ubisoft is doing, or a lot of the entertainment industry. It's to push not just push multiculturalism now in our age, but to try and sell the lie that that's the way it always was, like this Black Samurai dude. That's the way it always was. We a great example here is in Horrible Histories on the BBC that there were many Black Roman soldiers that lived in Britain in the 1st century AD. Right, for example, just not true. Just simply not true. Right, there might have been one or two. Right, it's possible. There's no accounts that there were any, but there might have been one or two. There certainly weren't thousands. It's just not the case. But so not just to make our societies now more diverse, for what reason, God only knows, but that it was always the case. And again, you're getting into the realms of sort of 1984 Big Brother Stalinist insanity. That the past is different to what you think it was, or what all evidence shows it was. So here's the lie, and you must accept the lie. You're not allowed to not accept the lie. That's like the ultimate. That's the ultimate command of the party, is that you must accept the lie, knowing that it's a lie. It's madness, absolute madness.
Well, look, I mean, far be it from me to be a person that rocks the boat and questions the narrative, but being constantly told that diversity is a strength. I mean, I look at China, one of the fastest growing, with a huge economy. I mean, they're not very diverse, quite frankly. I look at India, pretty good GDP growth anyway. They're not very diverse. So if diversity is such a strength, why is their economies growing so much? Yeah. And then I would also say that if diversity is such a strength, then why did people want to come here to begin with? When there wasn't such, when there wasn't such diversity. I think there's a reason why people want to come to certain parts of the world. I know that might be shocking to some people, might blow your mind, but there might just be people out there with bad intentions, and they might just want handouts, funnily enough. So anyway, we've got some super chats about this. So T-Nail89 dislikes puns, says it's no wonder game development is imploding if it has a family tree more incestuous than the Lannisters. Inbreeding results in defects after all. There's certain parts of this country which has quite a high amount of incestuous activity. That's downstream of certain cultures as well. Diversity is a strength, though, remember. Technically is in the gene pool from the perspective of not being incestuous. Anyway, moving on. T-Hill89 says, cliche is just a lazy post facto justification. And then continues and says, but my grandma told me ancient samurai were black and gay. Next, you'll tell me that Santa Claus is make-believe. Madness, madness, says I. Yeah, it is true madness. We're living in a clown state at the moment. Absolute clown show. And then last but not least, Zombie Box Review says, what's next? A race-swapped William Shakespeare? To be or not to be? That is the question. And she... Have we not already had William Shakespeare race swap? We probably have, haven't we?
Probably already happened, yeah. I can't recall a time when a depiction of the bard himself was race swapped, but they have race swapped many characters within his oeuvre. Right? One of the worst I ever saw was the Royal Shakespeare Society, I believe at the Globe Theatre on the South Bank in London, put on Richard III, and Richard was played by a black woman. So there you go. I mean, can you get any more short of putting her in a wheelchair? Or maybe she was on crutches even, but it was certainly a black woman as Richard.
Why?
Yeah. It's beyond trying to change history. It's then into the realm of deliberately trying to demoralize people.
Right? I mean, it's beyond parody at this point, stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's actually beyond parody.
Regardless, I think the bigger conversation here is that gamers aren't buying any of this BS anymore.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna buy the game. The pre-sales are already down substantially. Yeah. The pre-sales are down substantially. Ubisoft is imploding. They had to borrow another 1 point change billion whatever euro fake currency thing is going on in Europe, and they've got major problems, and they have Tencent sniffing up their butt right now to acquire as much so they can just basically take the company over. So China would then be in charge of Ubisoft. The future is grim for Ubisoft, which means it's grim for gamers because this is a massive studio. So it's they do have good studios. We've got a story coming up about a good studio, but
we do.
I want to make I wanted to do one thing that's not within the context of the story and ask you, gentlemen, are there any films the rest of this month you're looking forward to?
This month, the end of September.
Yeah.
I don't know what's coming out in September. I'm looking forward to TV shows coming out tomorrow.
Because I think at the last weekend of the month, I think is Wild Robot.
Oh yeah.
But
I
went because I like to review films for my channel, right? I like to see films so other people don't have to. And there's 2 movies coming out. I'm not terribly interested. Wolves, which is Brad Pitt and George Clooney. They're fixers.
Yeah, I couldn't care about that.
And then the other one is a very strange film called The Substance with Demi Moore. So
that looks quite good, actually, to be honest.
So I think I was leaning towards The Substance rather.
What was that called again, Culture?
The Substance.
The Substance.
Yeah, it's with Demi Moore.
It's a wild trailer for it, man. It's a wild ass trailer.
Yeah, I mean, and so that was the one I was keen to see because I was like, well, that looks pretty interesting. So it's just it's hard to find good movies. I mean, I'm like everything else. I'm like, what the flip is this? Like Fred's movie studio made it, and they've had no. But see, maybe that's the films I should go be seeing. Fred's movie studio films. Yeah.
Well, let's move on from that now, and then we will